is a vegetable casserole, and as you can see, once again, we have many ingredients, but this is again one of those things that you take a little time to put together, and then you go put it in the oven and you walk away for an extensive period of time. So it has its pluses and minuses there. If you've got time to do a lot of the cutting and the chopping of those things that can hold ahead of time, then you can put it together fairly quickly, and you can spend that time while it's in the oven enjoying your family or resting a little bit after work, or do this on the weekend. So we're going to start with about a cup of butternut squash that's cut in about 1-inch cubes. And whenever you're using a big squash like that, remember that you need to cut it so that it's got flat places so that you can rest it on the counter and actually do the cutting when it's flat and not rolling around and trying to chase it down. So we're going to mix everything in a big bowl. So I'm going to put the squash in there. I also have about a medium potato, and I'm using a red potato because I want it to hold its shape and not get it mushy at all. You could use a Yukon Gold potato as well. I've got about a cup of zucchini. Now, I used a fresh zucchini, but you could equally, in the cold weather, use frozen zucchini, which is what I've done with the green beans. I've used frozen green beans, and I'll probably need a little bit of help getting them out of the container here. You don't need to thaw them ahead of time because this is going to bake for a long time, and it's going to have time to thaw those out and continue the cooking in the oven. About a medium green pepper, medium carrot that we've cut in about 1/2-inch slices. Notice that nothing is cut real small. It's all cut in a fairly large chunk because it's going to be in the oven for a little over an hour actually. I've got about a cup of sliced mushrooms, and those you could use whatever kind of mushroom you have. If you find that you can't find one of these ingredients, for instance, it's the middle of winter and the zucchini doesn't look good and you don't have any left in your freezer from last summer, substitute another vegetable that's in here. Broccoli would work equally well. Cauliflower would work very well as well. So you have other options. The green peppers that I put in, you could have pulled those out of your freezer too. Just make sure that you break them up so they aren't in one big chunk, because sometimes they freeze together a little bit. I've got 2 cloves of garlic that I've minced. See if we can get those in there. And 15 ounces or 2 cups of no salt added diced tomatoes. And then we're going to go into some of the seasonings. Now what I have here is a whole variety of things. I've got 2 teaspoons of dried oregano, 2 teaspoons of dried basil, 2 teaspoons of dried dillweed. Now if you were doing this summer, you could use fresh. You'd want to change the quantities appropriately, but you could go ahead and use fresh. I'm also going to add about 1½ teaspoons of olive oil or extra virgin olive oil, whichever one you want, 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder. Notice one of the things that's not in here is onions, which is a little bit unusual. Usually they're in there, so if you're a big onion fan, that could go in here too. Just chop up a cup of onions, and then you may want to reduce the amount of onion powder that you've added. We did have chopped garlic, but I just put in 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder as well to get a little bit more intense flavor. 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, and somewhere between 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then you're simply going to stir all these together. It helps if you have a nice big bowl like we've got here. And once you get them all stirred together, you're going to put them in probably about a 2-quart casserole dish. I'm using an 8 by 11, a 7 by 11, somewhere in that area. Most of the casserole dishes will tell you on the bottom how much they hold. If they don't, you can always measure out some water and pour it in there or fill it up and go about it that way. But you can figure out about how much it will hold. And spread this out in the casserole dish. And then have your oven preheated to 375. And put some aluminum foil over the top of this. I would spray it with a little bit of nonstick spray and then put that sprayed part down on top of it, even it out a little bit more. And this is going to go in the oven for 40 minutes with the foil on it. Then take the foil off and just let it cook for another 25 to 35 minutes, and then check the bigger pieces to see whether or not they're done. I've got one in the oven already that's proceeded most of the way. The only ingredient that we didn't add at this point, let me see if I can pull a couple of my pot holders over. I don't want to put this directly on metal. Is some Parmesan cheese. Now we've baked it long enough. You can see that it's baked down quite well, and then you put about 3 to 4 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese over the top of it. This is one of the reasons that you don't want to add a lot of salt earlier on, because this does have a high amount of sodium in it as well. And then this is going to go back in the oven for about 5 minutes, and when the cheese is nice and melted, we'll be ready to eat. Okay, here you go, vegetable casserole. Now, this makes a great side dish for 6 people. You could also add beans to it and make it an entire meal, and it is really wonderful on a nice cold evening. Remember, one of the things we're trying to watch these days is portion sizes, so if you're having trouble with something like that with your family, try looking at smaller size plates as an alternative way to try and keep control of those portions. There you go. This is, again, vegetable casserole for Oklahoma Gardening. I'm Barbara Brown.